running, like it feels to me like you guys started running into making games issues. Like you are, there is always this gap when you start learning a new medium where you have taste for something. You play games, you see art, and you say, like you see good watercolor art, and you say to yourself, I want to make watercolor art like that myself, but you only went recently to the store and bought watercolors, and you're not sure how to get watercolors to look like that yet, right? And I feel like last week especially I saw like, okay, like you guys are having these situations where you want to do something, but you're not sure how to do something, right? And Game Boy Studio is like a very simple to pick up tool, but there's a lot of robustness to it. And I think before, like I was originally trying to make this class be more focused about, okay, let's make the games and let's talk about the games, but it's clear that there's like a need and want for you guys to learn how to make the stuff and how to use the tool as well at like a more higher level. So what we'll do today is have like a little Alcoholics Anonymous type thing, where we will share, you guys will share the grievances and the issues that you're having and things that you want to make. And we will see if maybe like one of you has an issue, they want to, I don't know, make a character move, and another one can help you with this, right? So maybe we can connect some of you that already know the issues, and maybe if there's an issue that like three of you want to know how to do, I can show it here as well, right? So that we have like a bit of a starting point, so that we have like a bit of like a sharing point essentially of like the issues that you guys are facing. So I think like it would be cool if we just like start maybe from the back, and you guys can maybe just say like what you were working on so far, right? So we have like those first two projects, like remaking the ALUO spaces inside of Game Boy Studio, and the second project to make a game out of Super Mario assets that is not Super Mario. So maybe like we can start from the back there, and you can just tell us like if you're having any issues, and then we start working towards the front here. And if you are, if somebody is facing issues and somebody else is also facing issues, like feel free, raise your hand, be like, oh, that's happening to me as well. I don't know how to import music either or whatever.
I mean, I technically have a few issues, but I learned how to fix them by doing them. Yeah, last time I said I had trouble because when you put in a text, it would sometimes overlap in the front, and then I realized that basically what you have to do is just have 2 lines of text at most, and that's it. And then I also had some trouble with basically what I had in my game is a conversation, and I put an actor each time someone said something, each time there was a new speaker. And there was a problem because I could only have 20 actors. So I guess what I did is I just changed scenes and the rest of the actors in there to complete the game. So then there was also another issue which someone else had brought up. Oh yeah. So basically, if you have to go in a certain order, or there was an issue when you use the same button to jump or interact with someone, and I know someone else had the same problem because they couldn't jump, they would just interact again. And so I fixed this by making a variable which, when you interact with someone, you set the variable to 1, and the first time when you interact, the variable will check if it's 0, and then after the first interaction it's turned to 1, and then you can't interact again.
Did anybody face any similar issues like this? I know like, so like obviously like the jumping thing.
I also had the issues with text overlapping.
Okay, did you manage to fix it?
No, it was just like when jumped over another. It was like, yeah, this one, and then it immediately, like, it was, you couldn't read it until the end because this one already.
Triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Я зачитав теж Петріна в свою шпатлицю просили. Це то не буде. Okay. Let's you guys?
Okay, so
Yeah, ще хочеш шлак тут Словенщини.
Yeah, so we're not here a lot, so we are a bit behind, but we have a concept of the game, and now we are still on the design making. Yeah, but we can come into that.
What's your idea?
So we're making Tehničnma
Mm-hmm.
as the first map where you can move and enter each room, except the ones that are usually locked here.
Mm-hmm.
And then in each room you can play some sort of a mini game or explore the room or communicate with NPCs. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, cool. I mean, we're like, after we're done with this, right, like you guys will have time to make stuff. So if you will run into issues, you will maybe know who to talk to. And if you will not know who to talk to, you can talk to me, of course. Yeah.
I had a problem where I couldn't make it so that when you interact with a certain object, you couldn't, and I didn't know how to exactly do that. Not like actor, but like an object like on the map.
Mm-hmm. Did you manage to fix it?
Not really, no, because I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
exactly that. And sadly, I didn't really have a lot of time. I also tried to make it so that a certain game has like a few endings, but that also didn't work because I didn't know how to make it because the game was about like a personality quiz,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on what you pick of the questions, it will lead you to a certain ending.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not figure that out fully.
Mm-hmm.
I also tried a new program for making games called Twine,
Mm-hmm.
because Case uses it, and I was like, I'll try it. And I had this idea that you're a police officer and someone calls you and they ended up confessing to you that they want to kill themselves, and you try to save them from their wrongdoing. That one was the only one that works fully, I think.
Okay.
So yeah.
No, but that's cool. Twine is a lot more focused in what you do with it, and therefore it's like way less technical issues pop up, right?
Yeah,
'Cause it's-
I wish I could add like visual stuff,
Mhm.
but right now it's just text.
That's perfectly fine. And maybe it's also like worth pointing out if any of you are like exploring other things, other ways of making games. I'm perfectly fine with you like doing that. Like it's right. It's about making games. It doesn't need to be in Game Studio. It's just the most convenient to teach. I think like what you're talking about is like here, like how do you interact with something that is not an actor? Did anybody try doing something like this? Like having something that's not an actor be interactable? No? So like one thing you can do is just making an actor that's invisible. It's like very like stupid way of fixing it, but it's like you just give it like an invisible sprite. So it's not visible, but it behaves in exactly the same way as an actor would then, right?
I mean, that's basically how I did my dialogue game. I made actors, that's why I had trouble with playing actors.
Yeah.
That dialogue was its own actor.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I mean, if the game gives you a tool for something and the tool says this is an NPC, it isn't like you can take the functions of it, but then like hide the NPC itself, right? And then it's gonna like behave in this way. So, and you don't need to learn like some other way to like make the screen be populated by text.
But I'm just wondering, like, since the actor, like, hitbox is really small, if there was a way to make it larger, because there's like this big like table, you can make it look like. I wish I could make it a little bit larger because like the actors like sprites are very small. So that's what I'm wondering about.
So, Alex, I think you were dealing with exactly this thing last week, right? Do you want to explain it?
The collisions?
Yes. Do you remember like the whole collision size thing that we were looking at last week, or?
Yeah. I mean, you can just change it.
Yeah. Here, if you go like you have game world, which is like the default view where you're working most of the time, but then inside of sprites, this is where like the drawings are, right? That are being used. And the game uses a collision box. That's like a space that the game recognizes as this is intractable for this sprite, right? Like I have a fish here, and you can see on the right-hand side, it says collision bounding box. And if this fish is in the game, any interaction with this fish will happen inside of this bounding box. But there's a width and a height property here. And if I change this, let's say that like maybe the fish was the enemy and I did not want the fish to like very easily hit you, I could make this smaller, right? This would make it so that only when you're like inside of this tiny spot, like in the bottom left, is this fish going to be dangerous. But let's say I want to make it super easy for you to like talk to the fish. I could set this to 60 and 60, and then I could move it around here a bit so that like it's positioned correctly, right? But like now it's like all of this space around the fish would be intractable as well.
That is so easy.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of like menus and sub-menus, and sometimes it's just about finding stuff and knowing where to look.
I didn't know it was that easy.
No worries. Okay. Alex, what are you up to? Did you have any more technical issues?
I just found a plugin for actor gravity. But now my game won't, like it doesn't run at all. I don't know, it's an error. Undefined identifier allocated sprite files. Like
Okay.
a bunch of errors. I don't know.
Let's maybe look at that later. Plugins, so like a lot of things that you might want to do in Game Boy Studio are possible with plugins, which are like downloadable scripts that somebody else made. Issues a lot of times come up with that because it's something that somebody else made. It worked for them, but maybe it won't work in your exact scenario. And then sometimes you just like spend time trying to figure out how to make the plugin work. Yeah, let's look at it later because this is like a very case-by-case basis, right? What about you, Lan and Micha?
So for now, yeah, issues with text overlapping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, other than that.
I think my problem was I was too ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to make a menu with like 5 options, and then putting a different thing to happen if each option was selected. I went into the variables, and then the variable is 1 from 5, this and this happens. And I missed something, so it just kept doing the last option.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they call it a fix, I just turned it into 2 options.
Yes, that is a fix. Yeah, no, a lot of times it's like when you're learning a tool, right? It's like you have like ambitions of what you want to do, but then especially with coding, like some of you guys like started like coding stuff with the scripting, and to some of you I was like showing how to use variables and stuff like that. I think this is like stuff that everybody needs to learn at their own pace, right? And like when you hit that, you hit that. But it's like when you hit that point where you're like, oh, I want to do options, I want to do branching, like a whole bunch of things now can start happening. And it's very easy for that to get out of hand, right? And like very easy for that to like not work. But like it's good sometimes to like have that experience of like, oh, I planned too much, or like I planned something, it's not working, and then to like scale back on it, to get back to something that like is more understandable for you at the moment, right? And it's like as you're working with this, right, like as you master the systems, then it becomes easier and easier to handle this over time. Yeah, so I guess like multiple people had issues with overlapping. A lot of things can be found by Googling them. Sometimes you find a plugin that promises you to do what you want it to do, but then the game doesn't work. And yeah, and then there's like some stuff like this, right? Like how do you interact with something that is not an actor, right? Like you make an actor that's invisible. Very practical stuff, I guess. I want to maybe show you guys one thing before we go on to working on games, which is how to put like in your own sprites. Because so far we've only worked with pre-made things, right? Like I gave you guys a bunch of like sprites, graphics to work with. This is needlessly complicated, I think, which is why we kept it until today. But who's interested in this? Like maybe put a hand up if you would like to put your own stuff, your own graphics in. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay, sure. That's good enough. So you guys are at a graphics school, so I'm assuming that you have some program where you can make graphics in, right? Like a Photoshop or Paint or whatever, right? Yes. Okay. If you're unsure what to use, I would recommend going to this website, pixelapp.com. It's here, pixelapp.com. Oh yeah, and Tiana sent me some of their questions. I'll put them on the list as well. She's not here, but yeah, go to this website or open like Photoshop or Paint or whatever, something that's gonna let you make like PNG graphics essentially.
Like Microsoft Paint?
Yeah, whatever you want to use. Like, there's people making art inside of Paint.
No, I love it. That's what I'm asking.
I'm gonna put it here. So to understand like how to put graphics in, we need to understand what Game Boy Studio actually wants. And because it's a piece of software for an old Game Boy, it has requirements for how big the graphics have to be, right? And the thing is, Game Boy Studio accepts only images that are 16 times 16 pixels in size. That's not a lot of pixels, right? That's like 16 across, 16 vertically. And in Pixel, if you click Create Sprite, there is a resize button on the right here. And I'm just gonna set this to be 16 by 16. And now you can see like my squares are huge here. Yeah, so it's 16 by 16. And I'm just gonna draw something inside of Pixel, right? Like it's not your first rodeo with a graphics program probably, like you guys can figure something like this out, but I will make a very bad smiley face here. I recommend like you try Pixel if you're not like, if you will find Photoshop too weird maybe with pixel art. This is a very simple tool, doesn't have that many buttons compared to modern graphics software, right? But essentially you need to draw something that is 16 in 16 by size. And there is another thing to it, which is that Game Boys have only 4 colors. You might have noticed like when you were running the game that your game is limited in how many colors it can display. Like it's always like this greenish black and white looking stuff. And if you Google for Game Boy colors or Game Boy, no, not colors, but Game Boy Color palette, you will find, this link. Low spec, like there's other websites as well, but this one very clearly gives you hex codes for the colors as well, right? And what I can do is I can take one of these colors, go into Pixel, set it as the color that I want to use, and then I'm just gonna paint bucket the smiley face with it, and I'll give it some sort of a background as well. That's of a different color. Right, but if you keep within like these 4 colors, that means that everything is going to be visible that you draw. You can still use other colors, but Game Boy Studio is going to interpret them as whatever of these 4 colors that a Game Boy can have is closest to your color. So like, let's say I chose a different tint of like light green, Game Boy Studio is just going to interpret it as this one. I'll give you guys like a few minutes to make something that's, so 16 by 16 in size, using only Game Boy colors.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You're not using the pixel, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
What colors do you use? Like, or will it
You-
immediately turn it into?
You still want to use Game Boy Color palettes, like the Game Boy Color palette, because any other color that you put in, it's just gonna take the closest one of these 4 colors. So let's say that you put in blue. Okay, I don't know, I'm paraphrasing, but this one is the closest to blue, mathematically speaking, so it's gonna interpret it as this one.
So, how do I add the product? How do I add the Game Boy product?
No, just, okay, just search for Game Boy Color palette. here, and you can change it. So just change them like one by one. You can make a preset color palette later, but if you're gonna do that a lot, but you can copy like the text code from the other. I did not copy it. Yeah. Okay, I saw most of you have like something, so let's take what you have and export it, and you can like work with it later, right? So if you're doing it inside of Pixel, there's a little floppy disk icon on the right next to the resize one. If you hit it, no, sorry, this one. There's a image button. You want to hit the image button, not the floppy disk. Hit the image button, and it says you can pick a file format here. You want to pick PNG, right? And it's going to say sprite sheet file export. And you want to hit download here. I'm going to hit download. It's going to ask me where do I want to save this. I'm going to put it into downloads, cool smiley, and it's going to download. If I check the downloads, I have it here, right? Very small, very low in size, but here's my smiley face. And remember where you download it, because we will need to move it to the Game Boy Studio folder. So again, you hit the image on the right-hand side and hit PNG, sprite sheet file export, download. Okay, maybe hands up if you downloaded your sprite. Okay. I'll give you like 2 more minutes to finish up your pixels and download it.
Is it PNG, right?
Yes, as a PNG. Okay, do you all have sprites in your downloads now? Okay. If you go back into Game Boy Studio, at the very top right, next to the play button and next to the export button, there is a folder button, right? This one in the top right here. And if you hit the folder button, what it's going to do is it's going to open the project files of your project, right? Wherever you saved it. So this one is 2_platforma. And you can see that there's assets, plugins, and projects folders. And if I go into assets, we will see some folders that we already know, like backgrounds, where we're saving our maps from tiled, right? And then there's other ones. And the one that we are interested in is sprites, right? So you hit the folder, then you go into assets, sprites, and you're gonna be able to see all of the sprites that are already in the project. So if you're like in the platformer one, right? If I go here, you can see the arrows, you can see cannonballs, cats, fish, Goombas, right? Like all of these different characters that are already in there. And putting something into Game Boy Studio is as simple as putting it into the correct folder. So if I put this here, coolsmiley.png, inside of sprites, I should now be able to make an actor that uses coolsmiley.png. So you put the PNG into the sprites folder, and then it's going to be already inside, and you will already be able to use it when it's like one frame.
It's not working.
Mm-hmm.
Sprites.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that. Probably got confused.
Yeah, here you don't have it, right?
Yes, I
Which one? Nice. Ja, tutaj jest to barwę ładnie. Ja. Yeah. So you click on the scene, and inside of the scene there's this thing called player breaking. No worries.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm here for that. So,
Yeah, I know, but
Can you research
I take up
the demand of
the new page,
yeah,
Тогава в пиксел имам проблемен да вече ствари под 16x16 пиксел не мога препознал в студио. Тъй да за граница и за со начинен, че ако гледаш като пример позбирай една момент, като например то. Той е бисто UFO je sestavljen iz naših sprajtov. On je sestavljen iz enega tukaj, enega tukaj, enega tukaj, enega tukaj, to so 6 sprajtov, tega skupaj. In tako so pač včasih za Game Boy delali, da so pač delali grafike, da je bilo še bolj nekaj večjega in bo vedno razstavljeno na več manjših delih, s katerih je sestavljeno. Tako da naredi ga kakega lahko v sprajtu, v pixel, pol pa kar lahko narediš, če hočeš, da je še večje, da daš še enega aktorja, ki konstantno sledi igralcu ena na ena. In rečeš, aha, ne vem, veš, da je še en sprite, tisti igralec tak premikaš, ti pa rečeš tistemu dodatnemu aktorju, bodi vedno dva igralca. In potem sestaviš visokega igralca, kar Mario naredi, Mario je res Leva iначе се заправя če se šlo pravi ampak ti imaš drug projekt, ja, mislim, čakaj, ste kancer? Okay.
Sorry.
To je del projekta, katerem hočeš delati? Ja, mora biti za vsak projekt, mora biti v svoj mapi, ne? Ker so projekt je pač kolekcija različnih fajlov, za katere smo gledali krake, ne? Je tukaj? Ja. To si me tam nastavilo, da bo player, da stisneš na steno. Ok, ja. Ampak za vsak projekt moraš te fajle posebej dodati, ne? Sorry?
Change the controls.
To alt the jump.
No, I want to change it so it's not alt. So
I'm not sure if we can do that. If it is, it's interesting. Yeah. A and B for top. Then A and B are the gateway and B is the...
So maybe up then?
Here the controls. You see, because here it says A, and then it's like all day or day. And I think if you just press space, what if you type in space? Like the word. No, I guess you can't say space. Do enter? Yeah, enter.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess there's something else of the space.
Alright.
And then if you go up, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. No, up. Here. Here it says you can set the jump button as well, right? So maybe you could set it to up. So you're going to jump with up.
Yeah.
Which is not exactly space, but it's maybe more important than, yeah. Okay. Okay, so this is like the last technical thing that I want to like show to everybody, right? Like the whole like, okay, you added your own thing in now. But if you set your own thing as a player, you're gonna run into a issue. If I set like, so when I select the scene, it says here player sprite sheet, and I can select cool smiley. And if I hit play, we're gonna see that like cool smiley is going to disappear when no, it won't disappear. It's always the same, that's the issue, like it's not animated, right? Whereas Mario, if I change it back to Mario, where is Mario? If I go on Mario, right, Mario jumps and makes a jumping animation, puts his little hand up, right? And turns around to the left and right and so on. How this works in Game Boy Studio is that if we click on Game World in the top left and click Sprites, we have the collection of every sprite that is inside of the folder, right? So these are all of the sprites that you can use in your game. And if I select Mario Small, you're gonna see that at the bottom left here, there's a bunch of animations defined. It says idle left, moving right, moving left, moving right, and you can see like at the very bottom here it says frames, right? So these are like frames that Mario is going to use while moving to the right, moving to the left, moving to the right, idle right, idle left, right, so on and so forth. And this is like it has these animations because here I selected that Mario is a platformer, right? And everything that you import by default is going to have fixed direction, which means it will not move at all. If you want it to move, let's say, in 4 different like if you wanted to have a moving animation, so like fixed and movement, you see it will create idle and moving, right? So let me just quickly make my little smiley capable of moving around. So what needs to happen is for every moving frame that you add, you need to add 16 pixels to the right of your current sprite. So this means that if I do, no, resize, right? So this is going to be the still frame, the one on the left, and the next 16 pixels are going to be the moving one. So it's like the sprites need to be one next to another if you're trying to create an animation, so that Game Boy Studio recognizes it. This is the part that I think is like a little bit stupid here.
What about the frame?
Yeah, new frame.
Where's that? Oh, add new frame. I guess you could do add new frame, but then like the export needs to look like this.
You can add new frame and adjust it in the export options that it's one row.
Okay. Okay, let's try that then. So let's try with the add new frame, right? But like the output needs to be that the frames are next to one another. So I'm just gonna like paint this very quickly.
Is there like an onion skin?
I have no clue, probably yes, no.
Yeah, ten chili peppers. There's onion, cheese base and butter.
Tu? Ne? Ah, vidim. Yeah, evo. It's onion skinning here, I guess. The onion. But yeah, after I made these two, then if I go to export your, here it says export your animation as a PNG sprite sheet, right? And here it's gonna say, okay, it's gonna export it at 16 by 32 pixels, right? 1 column, 2 rows.
You can turn up the column, I think it's going to be like,
Yeah, there we go. I need to set it to 2 columns, height plus, So 2 columns and 1 row. So it's like always like a line. And if this is set to 1, they're gonna go 1, 2. And if I set it to 2, they're gonna go 1, 2, like it's gonna horizontally spread. So hit download animated smiley. Right? No, it's like this, which is what I want it to be. One next to another. And if I go into GB Studio and put this one into the same folder, animated smiley, I can create now, like you see that like here it says styles and it's showing me both. But on the top here in the preview, I can only see the first one, right? But it has 2 frames here. So if I put it somewhere, it's gonna be, there we go. If I put it somewhere, it's gonna be swapping between these 2 frames. Let's put it into the world. Let's set animated smiley. Now I think when I run it, it's gonna be, animated, right? But that's because like they were one after another. And in this sprites view, it only has an idle animation. But if I set it to be something else, like let's say fixed direction and movement, now I have idle and moving. And I'm gonna remove this frame here. So in idle, it's only the black one. And in moving, it's blank. And now I need to draw the sprite. So if I select Like I can click here, you see, like it lets me click like in this like blocks. And I can draw like one part of it, and I can draw the second part of it, kind of like what we were doing in Tiled when we were making the levels. Where it's like you select with what you're drawing, right? Like I can make this like Joker-esque character now when it's moving around. I can give it like half of each sprite. But now it has like an idle animation and it has a moving animation. And Game Boy Studio is now going to recognize when the character is moving and when the character is not moving. Right? So now it's displaying this because it's moving, and it stops moving, and it goes back to the idle one. And this can be extended inside of these presets, right? Fixed direction plus movement means there is one animation for moving and one animation for standing still. 4 directions means there is one frame for each direction that this is moving. So maybe if you're making like a top-down game, you want a moving up, moving down sprite, right? 4 directions and movement includes the movement as a separation of the directions. So it's like, how does my character look like when it's just facing to the left, and how does my character look like when it's moving to the left? And then there's also platformer player, which includes the jumping and climbing and so on, right? So, as a recap, inside of Pixel, I guess like we found out you can make new frames, right? And animate it. But then when you are exporting it, you need to make sure that this columns section is as high as possible, so you only end up with 1 row. Okay? Cool. I'm gonna close with this, right? Like if you guys have questions, raise your hands. I'll run around, I'll help you out. And yeah, we're still just working on we are working just like on the first 2 games. So like the recreation of ALUO and on something that is using a platform character controller. So you can keep working on those 2 projects, and those are gonna be the only 2 projects that we'll have within this workshop, because I feel like it's gonna be like, I mean, realistically, it's like this is the second to last lecture that we have for this semester. And then next semester, we'll restart with like more projects and more like, let's make games. And this one now is like more let's familiarize ourselves with the tool. Okay? Yeah. So, yeah, that's it. Let me know if you guys need help with something. If I just did a bad job explaining this, you can raise your hand. I'll come and help you out. Yes.